Imagine this. While you're asleep, wrapped in blankets and dreaming about absolutely nothing useful, the ocean is throwing the biggest, wildest, most scientifically unhinged night show on Earth. Billions of creatures are rising toward the surface like a living tide. Tiny plankton are glowing nervously in the dark. Squid and fish are hunting with stealth that would make ninjas jealous. Corals are launching synchronized fireworks. Jellyfish are drifting upward like confused lava lamp blobs. And deep-sea creatures are peering through the dark with eyes so huge they could double as satellite dishes. Meanwhile, whales are half sleeping. Sharks are gliding like silent Roombas with an attitude. The water chemistry is quietly rearranging itself, and microscopic organisms are hauling carbon into the deep like overworked delivery drivers. And floating above it all, the moon, flipping switches in the minds of animals that live by its glow. This isn't just the ocean at night. It's an entire hidden world that wakes up when we power down. And tonight, we're diving into every glowing, whispering, drifting, shimmering, quietly chaotic corner of it. Stay till the end, because once you see what the ocean does while we sleep, you'll never look at nighttime the same way again. When we close our eyes at night, we tend to imagine the world dimming with us. Streets settling, birds tucking their heads under their wings, refrigerators humming their lullabies. But far from our blankets and bedtime routines, the ocean is preparing for one of the greatest daily transformations on Earth. It is the kind of transformation that would win every category if nature ever hosted its own award show: best lighting, most dramatic reveal, and outstanding performance by several billion cast members. Because when the sun slips under the horizon, the ocean doesn't go to sleep. It does the opposite. It wakes up. To understand this nightly shift, imagine the ocean as a giant apartment building where half the residents refuse to come out until the sun leaves. While we're brushing our teeth, the sea is unlocking every door, flipping switches, and letting a tidal wave of nocturnal characters flood the scene. The quiet blue surface we see in daytime becomes something closer to a cosmic stage, with new voices, new lights, and new mysteries rising from depths that sunlight never touches. If the daytime ocean is a library, the nighttime ocean is, well, a nightclub, minus the questionable music choices, and plus several thousand species glowing like they dressed for a rave on purpose. What makes night in the ocean so astonishing is not just the number of creatures that suddenly become active, but the feeling that the sea undergoes a personality shift. During the day, sunlight rules. Visibility favors hunters with sharp eyes and fast bodies. Plankton, those tiny drifters that power most marine food webs, prefer to stay deep, hiding from predators who can spot a snack the moment it wiggles wrong. Life is strategic, careful, cautious. It's the ocean running on business hours. But nighttime? Nighttime is freedom. Without the sun, the rules change. Creatures that spent all day avoiding being seen suddenly make their ascent. Animals that are practically invisible in the bright water come out and roam. The ocean darkens into a world where sound, pressure, and light, if any, become the main tools of survival. It's like someone flips the script, and everyone who was hiding becomes the main character. If the ocean had an HR department, this would definitely count as a shift change. Part of the magic lies in how little we humans witness this transformation. Even with submersibles, cameras, and deep-sea robots, the vast majority of the ocean at night remains a mystery wrapped in pressure, salt water, and creatures that almost look like they were designed during a brainstorming session where someone said, "Let's get really weird with it." But these mysteries aren't just for show. The nightly awakening affects global climate, entire food chains, and even the flow of nutrients that keeps everything from whales to tiny microbes alive. It is a world that operates on rhythms older than humanity itself. Imagine drifting above the surface of the open ocean on a moonless night. The water looks almost black, reflecting only the stars. It appears peaceful, calm, maybe even empty. But just below, the darkness is packed with movement. Fish the size of pencils and fish the size of toddlers are swimming upward in silence. Jelly-like creatures drift upward with slow, pulsing beats. Squid dart through the water like caffeinated commas. Tiny crustaceans propel themselves in short, determined bursts, motivated by instinct and the promise of dinner. 1 square meter of this darkness could contain more living things than most forests hold in the same space. The ocean at night is crowded, buzzing, and impossibly alive, even if it hides that energy under a calm surface that looks like nothing at all. And then there are the lights. Not city lights, not moonlight, creature lights. Little sparks and flashes from bodies designed to glow. Some glow to communicate, others to confuse predators, and others simply because evolution decided. You know what this shrimp needs? Built-in LEDs. If stars fell into the sea, this is probably what it would look like. An entire galaxy drifting, pulsing, communicating in flashes we are only beginning to decode. But the magic is not only biological, it's emotional. There is something humbling about realizing that while we sleep, the ocean is hosting the largest nightly gathering of life on Earth. There is something eerie but beautiful about knowing trillions of small creatures are rising toward the surface at the same exact moment, every night, everywhere across the globe. It makes human routines feel small and charmingly simple. We need alarms, schedules, coffee. The ocean just waits for the sun to drop and says, "All right, everyone, let's get moving." This first chapter is meant to pull you into that world, to get you imagining the ocean as a place that doesn't wait for us to wake up or pay attention. It operates on ancient rhythms, and at night, those rhythms become a symphony. A chaotic one, yes, but a symphony nonetheless. While we lie in our beds, dreaming about deadlines, vacations, or giant talking sandwiches, the ocean is conducting an entire planet's worth of nocturnal activity. And as we move through the next chapters, we'll dive deeper into each part of that transformation, exploring the night shift that plays out beneath the waves, while the rest of the world sleeps. If the daytime ocean is a calm suburban neighborhood, then the moment the sun goes down, it turns into the most crowded, silent commute on the planet. This nightly movement, called the vertical migration, is the largest synchronized movement of animals anywhere on Earth. And the wildest part? Most people have never heard of it, even though it happens every single night around the entire globe, as reliable as the ticking of a clock and far more dramatic than your phone's morning alarm. Imagine billions of tiny bodies rising through layer after layer of darkening water, each one propelled by instinct, hunger, and a strong desire not to be eaten. It's the ocean's daily commute. Except nobody's late, nobody's texting while drifting, and everyone is both a potential traveler and a potential meal. The stars of this migration are mostly small creatures: zooplankton, krill, larval fish, shrimpy odds and ends that look like confetti with a survival instinct. During the day, these creatures wait in the deeper, dimmer layers of the ocean, where predators that rely on sunlight can't easily spot them. Down there, they hover in a kind of suspended anticipation, like tiny commuters, waiting for the all-clear to board the world's largest invisible elevator. When the light fades in the evening, they begin rising. Slowly at first, then in astonishing volume. If you could watch it from the side, the whole column of water would look like it was turning upward into a living, drifting sandstorm. Only instead of dust, it's tiny animals with places to be. These migrations are not a casual swim upward. They are a precisely timed event, a biological schedule built into millions of small bodies. Creatures begin rising, not when it gets dark on the surface, but when the light dims in their own layer, sometimes hundreds of meters below the upper waves. Light is the traffic signal of the ocean, and these creatures read it with incredible sensitivity. A change so slight that our eyes wouldn't catch it can signal them to start moving. And when they do, they don't stop at some predetermined point. Different species rise to different depths depending on what they need: food, warmth, or safety in numbers. It's like a bustling city with residents heading to their favorite neighborhoods. Only the neighborhoods are layers of seawater stacked like invisible floors. The higher they rise, the more they encounter. The ocean surface at night becomes a feeding ground, a floating buffet for all these upward travelers. Algae and other microscopic organisms are most abundant near the sunlit layers that the small creatures avoid during the day because it's basically snack aisle for predators. At night, though, they can feast in peace. Well, relatively. Peace is a strong word in an environment where half the residents want to eat the other half. But at least the cover of darkness gives the little guys a fighting chance. In the grand scheme of migration choices, it's like choosing to walk home at night instead of in broad daylight when every hawk in the area is offering unsolicited aerial attention. As these creatures rise, their presence attracts slightly larger predators, and those predators attract even larger ones. The migration becomes a chain reaction. A tiny crustacean drifting upward at the right moment might find itself suddenly surrounded by small fish that also made the journey. That school of fish might then draw the attention of squid, which in turn might interest something even bigger lurking in the dark. It's a vertical pathway that connects animals of nearly every size, from microbes to species that could swallow a basketball without blinking. The result is a nightly redistribution of energy, nutrients, and life. An entire ecosystem assembling itself, layer by layer, under the cover of night. What makes vertical migration so extraordinary is not just the scale or the precision, but the fact that it affects the planet on a physical level. The rising and sinking of so many organisms stirs water layers, blending chemicals, transporting nutrients, and moving carbon deeper into the sea. Think of it as the ocean's gentle stirring spoon. Except the spoon is made of trillions of moving bodies, and none of them know they're participating in planetary engineering. Each night, their movement helps cycle the ingredients that fuel marine life, and their return to the depths at dawn, just as synchronized and dramatic as their ascent, brings those ingredients back downward, creating a back and forth motion that scientists sometimes call the ocean's heartbeat. Of course, this enormous event is not visible to the naked eye. If you were floating on a boat above it, you might not notice anything except the occasional ripple or a slightly eerie feeling that something very busy is happening just beyond your senses. But if you dipped a light into the water, just a small glowing bulb, you would suddenly see a crowd gather. Tiny organisms would drift toward it, attracted not by curiosity, but because light offers them a brief chance to orient themselves. It's like holding up a lantern in the middle of an invisible crowd and realizing the whole world is closer than you thought. The vertical migration remains one of the most astounding natural events that humans almost never witness. It is quiet, rhythmic, and unstoppable. There's no fanfare, no flashing sign saying, "Migration now beginning." There is simply a world of tiny travelers rising through the dark, traveling pathways older than spoken language, older than mountains, older than us. And the beauty of it all is that this nightly ritual doesn't ask for an audience. It happens because the ocean is alive in a way that is constant, dynamic, and unapologetically busy. even while we sleep in blissful ignorance of the billions of commuters moving silently beneath the waves. When darkness settles over the ocean, the smallest residents take center stage. Plankton, those microscopic drifters that are usually treated like background characters during the day, suddenly gain enough influence to change the mood, behavior, and even the color of the sea. They are the unsung heroes of the night shift, rising toward the surface not with confidence exactly, but with that wobbly sense of determination you might see in a toddler learning to walk while holding a cookie. And yet, despite their miniature size and questionable stability, these tiny organisms essentially dictate the nightly pulse of the upper ocean. Plankton might be small, but they come with a personality that reads somewhere between shy introvert and accidental celebrity. During the day, they stay deeper in the water, avoiding sunlight, which they experience less like a warm, comforting glow and more like an invitation to every predator with working eyes. But once the sun disappears, the plankton creep upward in enormous numbers, so enormous that they can reshape entire layers of the sea. It's like the ocean throws a nightly party, and the plankton are the first ones to show up, even if they still seem unsure whether they're supposed to bring snacks or just be the snacks. As they rise, something spectacular occurs in many species. They begin to glow. It's not a grand glow, not the bold, confident shine of a lantern or a lighthouse. It's more of an accidental shimmer, as if they themselves aren't entirely sure why they're glowing, but have decided to embrace it anyway. These flashes, pulses, and faint halos are caused by chemical reactions inside their tiny cells. A built-in lighting system, powered by proteins and enzymes. To us, it looks magical. To them, it's survival. Most plankton don't glow to look pretty. They glow to scare off predators, signal disturbances, or trick something larger into thinking twice before taking a bite. For a creature barely larger than a grain of sand, scaring someone 10,000 times your size with a flash of light is a pretty bold move. It's like the ocean's version of bluffing. The presence of glowing plankton turns the water into something that feels alive in a way that's hard to describe. If you were to glide your hand through the sea at night, you might see streaks of blue light trailing your fingers like sparks from some underwater wand. Every movement sets off little bursts of luminescence, each one a tiny alarm bell from plankton that prefer not to be bumped, touched, startled, or, ideally, noticed at all. These organisms are nervous little creatures, and their nervousness produces some of the most beautiful natural light displays on Earth. But their nightly rise isn't just for show. It is driven by hunger, deep, evolutionary hunger. Near the ocean's surface, plankton find the richest layers of microscopic plants and nutrients. These food sources bloom under sunlight during the day and linger long enough for plankton to scoop them up at night. Every upward drift is a journey for survival, as essential as breathing. And in the process of feeding, they transform the surface water into a bustling cloud of activity, fueling food webs that rely on their nightly presence. Tiny though they are, these drifting creatures create the foundation for countless nighttime encounters. Plankton-feeding fish, jelly-like predators, and species with mouths shaped like miniature vacuum cleaners all take advantage of the floating buffet. Each bite in this midnight feast starts with plankton, offering themselves, reluctantly but inevitably, to the rest of the night. It might not be glamorous, but it keeps the ocean running. Their nightly arrival is like the grand opening of a restaurant that everyone depends on but nobody thanks. And then there's the weirdness. Plankton come in so many shapes that it feels like evolution was doodling without supervision. Some resemble tiny glass sculptures, others look like geometric puzzles, and a few have such bizarre attachments that you'd swear they were invented by a bored designer with too much time and too many sticky notes. But at night, all these shapes gather near the surface, drifting upward in a shimmering cloud. A cloud that shifts the entire fabric of the ecosystem. One of the strangest and most delightful quirks is how sensitive many plankton are to disturbances. A gentle wave, a passing fish, or even a falling drop of water can trigger a field of tiny lights, spreading in ripples like whispers through the darkness. This sensitivity means the ocean surface at night becomes reactive. It responds. It interacts. It flickers with life, making the boundary between water and air feel thin and electric. Even their movements, though small, affect the larger world. As plankton drift and feed, they alter the chemistry around them. They absorb carbon, release oxygen, and help stir the thin layers near the surface. They're like tiny, oceanic gardeners, pruning, trimming, and reorganizing the environment, one microscopic bite at a time. And despite their unassuming size, their nightly activities help fuel entire populations of animals that depend on them. While we're dreaming in the safety of our beds, these tiny drifters are transforming the night sea into an ever-changing landscape of shimmering lights and drifting shapes. They move with an urgency that seems almost poetic. Small creatures rising into a dark world full of danger simply because life demands it. They don't know they're creating one of the planet's most beautiful displays. They don't know that humans marvel at their glow. They are just surviving, just drifting, just flashing nervously into the night. And yet, through their simple, ancient routines, they turn the nighttime ocean into a glowing galaxy beneath the waves, a world where every pulse of light hints at the story of something small, trying very hard to live in a place that is vast, dark, and endlessly deep. When the last traces of sunlight vanish beyond the horizon, the ocean enters a stretch of darkness that would terrify most land animals into paralysis. But for certain marine hunters, this darkness is not an obstacle. It's an opportunity, the equivalent of flipping the sign on a storefront from closed to come in snacks. While we dream in warm beds, entire armies of nocturnal predators clock in, stretch their fins, and prepare for a hunt that thrives on silence, shadow, and an impressive amount of biological ingenuity. Among the most accomplished of these night shift specialists are squid and lanternfish, two creatures that treat darkness like a gift-wrapped advantage. Squid, for instance, are built for nighttime action. If you could give a creature the perfect job description for hunting in near total darkness, you'd end up describing a squid without even knowing it. They move with fluid, ghost-like precision, propelling themselves with jets of water that make no more noise than a soft exhale. Their bodies shift colours depending on the moment, allowing them to either blend into the background or suddenly flash patterns meant to confuse prey. In daylight, these flashes are impressive. At night, they become something more powerful. A language of pulses and bursts that only the most attentive creatures can interpret. A squid can vanish almost instantly, fading into the black even as it moves toward an unsuspecting meal with the smooth, eerie glide of a drifting shadow. Squid also possess a remarkable sensory advantage. Enormous, sophisticated eyes that seem designed to detect even the faintest hint of movement. Scientists sometimes joke that squid eyes look like they belong on a creature that spends its evenings spying on neighbours. But in reality, those eyes serve a critical purpose. Every tiny flicker of reflected light from another animal becomes a beacon. Every slight shift in the water, a signal. Squid hunt by reading micro details most creatures would miss completely, turning the night sea into a three-dimensional braille map of vibrations and glimmers. When they strike, it is with startling precision, tentacles shooting out so quickly that the prey barely knows anything happened, let alone that it is now part of a midnight snack. Lanternfish, on the other hand, take a more subtle approach to the whole eat in the dark concept. These small fish are named for the glowing organs sprinkled along their bodies, organs that look like tiny built-in lamps but function more like elaborate camouflage tools. Instead of using light to reveal themselves, lanternfish use it to disappear. By matching the faint glow of moonlight filtering from above, they erase their silhouettes, making it nearly impossible for predators looking upward to see them. This strategy is known as counter-illumination. Though lanternfish themselves aren't thinking about scientific terminology, they're simply trying not to become the ocean's version of a free sample. But lanternfish are not just avoiding being eaten, they are hunters too. Their eyes are adapted to detect subtle flashes and biological glimmers from other organisms. Where humans would see nothing but inky darkness, lanternfish perceive a world of faint signals, brief traces of movement, flickers of blue light, or the gentle pulse of something edible drifting a few meters away. They rely on stealth rather than speed, approaching their prey with patient, deliberate movements. Their jaws may be small, but their strategy is relentless. Slip through the dark, avoid attention, take the bite, and vanish. If lanternfish were people, they'd be the quiet co-workers who somehow always get the job done before anyone notices they've even started. Together, squid and lanternfish form a nighttime dynamic that resembles an underwater version of an intricate dance. Squid patrol as rapid, agile hunters, darting through the dark with confidence. Lanternfish navigate with subtlety, blending in until they decide it's time to strike. Their techniques differ, but their goal is the same: thrive when the rest of the ocean hesitates. The nighttime world they inhabit is not kind to hesitation. In daylight, predators can rely on clear visibility and stable patterns. At night, the rules shift. Sound becomes more important, pressure changes more significant, and the ability to react instantly becomes the difference between eating and being eaten. Many nocturnal predators possess sensitive lateral lines, rows of tiny sensory cells that detect vibrations. These lines allow them to feel the movement of nearby creatures as ripples along their bodies. To a squid or lanternfish, the ocean in darkness is alive with texture, rhythm, and subtle signals that reveal far more than sight alone. Even their bodies reflect their commitment to the night shift. Squid are covered in chromatophores, cells that expand and contract to change color faster than you can blink. Lanternfish carry photophores that act like dimmable bulbs. Both have anatomies optimized for silence, with soft bodies that slip through the water without creating the kind of turbulence that louder predators leave behind. In a place where one careless ripple can give away a position, this quietness isn't just elegant, it's essential. What makes these nocturnal predators so fascinating is that they succeed not by overpowering the dark, but by embracing it. They don't fight the limits of low light, they evolve around them. They turn absence into advantage, obscurity into strategy. Its efficiency meets mystery meets please do not glow unless absolutely necessary. And while we sleep blissfully unaware of the silent performance taking place beneath the waves, Squid and lanternfish carry out the ancient routine that has shaped marine life for millions of years. The night ocean belongs to them, not because it's empty, but because they've learned how to read the script in a world written in shadows. Once the sun sinks away and the ocean becomes a cathedral of darkness, a strange and beautiful language begins to glow into existence. It isn't spoken, whispered, or sung. It flickers, it pulses, it shimmers in flashes that last seconds or less, tiny, electric syllables drifting through the water. This language is bioluminescence, the ability of living things to produce their own light. And in the deep night of the ocean, where sunlight may as well be a myth, it becomes the main method of communication. Imagine billions of organisms sending messages into the dark, each one glowing with a purpose: to attract, repel, confuse, seduce, warn, or simply yell, "I exist," into an otherwise silent void. Bioluminescence begins with chemistry. Inside many marine organisms live specialized cells, or pockets, full of substances that react when mixed. When the chemicals combine, usually some version of luciferin and luciferase, the result is a small burst of light. The light often looks blue or green because those colors travel well through seawater. Red light fades fast, which is deeply inconvenient for anything hoping to glow in that color. But blue and green, they're the ocean's neon signs, instantly recognizable in a world that rarely sees any color at all. To the creatures using it, bioluminescence is essentially the only reliable flashlight they can carry without batteries or instructions. But what makes this phenomenon remarkable isn't the chemistry, it's the creativity with which animals use it. The ocean's night shift turns bioluminescence into a multi-purpose survival tool. Some species use it like a romantic signal, hoping to catch the attention of a mate who can recognize their exact glow pattern. Others flash bright to startle predators, a kind of underwater jump scare. Some release glowing clouds that drift like phantom smoke, confusing anything chasing them. There are even animals that carry glowing lures, literal biological fishing lamps, dangling over their mouths to attract prey so curious or simply gullible that they swim directly into the waiting jaws. Each glow has meaning, and each meaning changes the way the ocean behaves after dark. For some animals, glowing is a form of flirting. Certain species of deep-sea fish produce carefully timed pulses of light that function like love taps across the water. They might flash once, wait, flash twice, and hope the other fish recognizes the pattern. If the response matches, then congratulations. They've just exchanged nature's equivalent of a phone number. If the response is a different pattern entirely, the signal means not interested, or please stop lighting up near me before something enormous sees us. Other creatures glow not to attract, but to reject attention. For tiny animals, flashing can be a form of strategic panic, like yelling "boo" at a burglar. A quick burst of light can momentarily disorient or startle a predator. After all, most hunters navigating by faint light do not expect their dinner to suddenly behave like a sparkler. That fraction of a second is often enough for the glowing creature to dart away. Some species even shed bioluminescent particles as they escape, creating a glowing breadcrumb trail that doesn't actually lead anywhere. It's the underwater version of tossing your jacket at someone and running in the opposite direction. Then there's the famous anglerfish, perhaps the most recognizable user of bioluminescence thanks to its dangling lure. Its glowing appendage attracts prey that can't resist investigating the strange shimmer in the dark. The fish approaches, sees what looks like a tasty snack suspended in the water, and swims closer, only to discover far too late that the snack is attached to a mouth that could, metaphorically speaking, double as a garage door. The lure glows because it houses bacteria that make the light for the fish, a kind of evolutionary outsourcing arrangement. The fish gets a glowing tool, the bacteria get a permanent home, and unsuspecting prey get the short end of the deal. Some animals use bioluminescence in far gentler ways. Tiny drifting organisms create glowing trails when disturbed, like constellations coming alive beneath the waves. Some jelly-like creatures pulse with slow, mesmerizing waves of light, illuminating their translucent bodies in patterns that feel almost hypnotic. These displays don't always serve a dramatic purpose. Sometimes they are simply a byproduct of movement, a glowing echo of existence. If the ocean had a nightlife district, these would be the ambient artists who perform without knowing they have an audience. The most astonishing thing about this glowing language is how widespread it is. In the deep ocean, more than half of all known species can produce light. It's not a special feature or a rare mutation. It's a normal part of life there. The darkness encourages creativity, and evolution has answered with an endless variety of glows, flashes, and chemical lanterns. Some species can dim or brighten their light. Others can turn it off completely. Some synchronize their flashes with others nearby, creating coordinated waves that move like silent fireworks. And though humans may admire bioluminescence for its beauty, the ocean uses it for work. Every flicker represents a decision. Attract, evade, communicate, distract, mislead, declare, hide, threaten, or entice. It is a full vocabulary of glowing signals, one that carries through water more effectively than sound or scent ever could. While most of the planet sleeps, unaware of the watery light show happening just out of view, the ocean speaks in colour, brief, brilliant, and entirely its own. Down in the parts of the ocean where sunlight fades into rumour, the world becomes a place shaped entirely by darkness, a place where shadows outweigh shapes, where outlines disappear, and where surviving the night, which is every hour of every day, is its own brilliant challenge. In this realm of perpetual dimness, evolution has gotten incredibly creative, gifting many deep-sea creatures with eyes so massive, so finely tuned, and so strangely beautiful that they seem like organic night vision goggles, crafted by a very dramatic and extremely generous engineer. These eyes aren't just big for fun. They are huge because every speck of light matters. Down there, a single photon is the difference between finding a meal and becoming one. The first thing people tend to notice about deep-sea eyes is their size. Some species, like certain deep-sea fish, own eyes so disproportionately large that you could reasonably assume evolution accidentally clicked the zoom in button and then refused to undo it. The colossal squid, for example, has eyes roughly the size of a dinner plate, some of the largest eyes in the entire animal kingdom. If you ever needed proof that the deep ocean runs on drama, this is it. Those giant eyes aren't just big, they're sensitive. They can detect the faintest flicker of bioluminescence from far away, giving these animals advance warning when something large and hungry is moving through the water. For creatures like these, the ocean is not seen in terms of detail. It's seen in terms of contrast. A tiny flash from a frightened animal, a gentle shimmer from drifting particles, or a sudden shadow shifting through the water can reveal truths that sharp vision alone never could. Deep sea eyes don't need crisp resolution. They need sensitivity. They need to gather light the way solar panels gather sun, soaking up every photon like it's a priceless relic that must be carefully cherished and put to good use. Then there are species with tubular eyes. Yes, tubular, shaped like tiny telescopes pointed upward toward whatever faint glow exists far above. These eyes look bizarre, as though someone in charge of designing fish got carried away building periscopes. But the design is pure brilliance. Tubular eyes allow certain fish to collect vertical light with maximum efficiency. In the dim world beneath the twilight zone, these animals are essentially staring upward at the ceiling, waiting for silhouettes of potential prey to drift between them and the faint glow of the distant surface. Their eyes act like motion sensors in a world where motion is the most valuable commodity. Some creatures take this one step further by giving their tubular eyes a twist. Literally, their eyes can rotate inside their sockets, allowing them to look both upward and sideways without moving their bodies. If that sounds mildly unsettling, that's because it is. But for the animals that rely on this adaptation, it's also life-saving. In a world where staying still can be safer than moving, having rotating eye telescopes is an extraordinary advantage. It allows them to scan for predators while not giving away their own presence. Curiously, not all deep-sea creatures opt for enormous eyes. Some take the opposite approach, having tiny, highly specialized organs that gather light without needing a big lens. But those that do invest in giant eyes share a common strategy: amplify low light as much as possible. Some enhance contrast, some boost brightness, some pack their retinas with light-sensitive cells far denser than anything humans could ever dream of. To us, a faint glow beneath the waves would be invisible. To these animals, it might look like a blinking sign that reads "food this way." Evolution has even given some species mirrored structures inside their eyes, reflective surfaces that bounce light back across the retina, doubling the chance it will be detected. These reflective patches act like tiny biological disco balls, except instead of throwing light outward, they gather and reuse light to maximize visibility. It's the same logic behind the glowing eyes of cats. Except in the deep ocean, the glow isn't just for show. It's a survival mechanism built right into the eye's architecture. And of course, with great vision comes great responsibility, avoiding becoming the thing something else sees. Many deep-sea animals position their eyes in unusual places, high on their heads, far apart or forward-facing, to help spot predators or prey from unexpected angles. Predators, watching from below, see only faint outlines. Predators, watching from above, see almost nothing at all. The deep sea is full of creatures trying to outsee one another in ways that would make a competitive sports league jealous. One of the most astonishing things about these adaptations is how specific they are. There is no one-size-fits-all deep-sea eye. Some creatures need to detect tiny drifting organisms. Others need to spot large predators approaching from the gloom. Some need to interpret flashes of bioluminescent communication, while others use vision mainly for navigation. Each species has evolved exactly the kind of eye that suits its needs, whether that means becoming a master of contrast detection, a silhouette hunter, or a specialist in reading faint pulses of blue light. Yet despite their differences, all these creatures share a common truth. They live in a world without sunlight, and their eyes tell the story of evolution's relentless creativity when faced with darkness. These eyes are sculpted by scarcity, honed by necessity, and perfected by millions of years' worth of trial and error. They represent a biological arms race against a black abyss that hides everything and reveals nothing. While we sleep unaware of the silent realm beneath us, creatures with eyes the size of plates or shaped like tubes glide through the dark with a confidence we can hardly imagine. Their world may be dim, but their vision is undeniably bright. Proof that life always finds a way to adapt, innovate, and, in the deep sea's case, develop a pair of built-in goggles so advanced they make human technology look like someone taped 2 magnifying glasses to a helmet. If the ocean ever auditioned for the title of most surprising nighttime performer, coral reefs would win without even submitting a resume. By day, corals look like peaceful, plant-like structures, quietly minding their business, while hosting fish that dart around like distracted shoppers. They appear serene and unbothered. The introverts of the sea, rooted in place, polite, and not particularly expressive. But once a year, or sometimes once every few years, depending on the species, these understated organisms throw one of the most jaw-dropping nighttime spectacles in nature, a mass spawning event where thousands of coral colonies release eggs and sperm into the dark water in perfect, dazzling synchrony. It's like the entire reef suddenly decides to star in its own explosive celebration. One part biological necessity, one part underwater glitter storm, and one part bewildering chaos that, if we're being honest, smells just faintly like nature's version of a science lab. Coral spawning happens only at night for several very practical reasons. The darkness adds a layer of safety, reducing the chances that hungry reef residents will swim around snacking on coral eggs before they even have a chance to meet their genetic counterparts. Moonlight offers just enough illumination for the corals to coordinate their timing without revealing the event too clearly to predators. But more than anything, nighttime provides stillness. As the winds calm and surface waters soften, the ocean becomes the perfect mixing bowl for the tiny bundles of life that corals send drifting upward. What makes these events so astonishing is how coordinated they are. Corals cannot talk. They cannot wave a tiny sign that says, "Tonight at 11." They have no group chat. Yet somehow, colonies spread across vast stretches of reef release their gametes within minutes of each other. Imagine hundreds of thousands of tiny underwater cities, all deciding to throw confetti into the water at the exact same moment, without a rehearsal. This is biological choreography, at a level that would make any dance company jealous. Scientists have spent decades trying to understand how corals pull this off, and they've discovered that a combination of cues helps set the schedule. Temperature changes over the seasons tell corals the approximate time of year. The lunar cycle fine-tunes the month, and the fading light after sunset narrows it down to the exact hour. Corals, in a sense, keep calendars coded into their tissues, biological clocks so finely tuned that a reef can predict lunar timing more reliably than most humans can predict their own alarms. When the moment arrives, the reef transforms. Small, buoyant spheres begin to drift upward from every direction. They rise like glowing snowflakes, bright, pale, and unbelievably delicate. Each coral colony releases either bundles of sperm or bundles of eggs, and these bundles float toward the surface, where they break apart and mingle with those from other colonies. If the ocean had a ceiling, this would be the moment it gets painted with tiny pastel beads. It's a slow, surreal ascent that turns the water column into a vertical river of drifting life. To the fish and invertebrates living on the reef, coral spawning is something like a surprise buffet. Many of them spend the night darting around in a kind of frantic glee, gobbling up the drifting bundles as if someone shattered a piñata over their heads. But thankfully for the corals, they release so many eggs and sperm that even the busiest grazers cannot consume them all. This overproduction is intentional. Corals rely on sheer numbers to ensure that enough fertilization occurs despite the chaos of hungry neighbors. the spawning event is not just beautiful, it is essential to the survival of coral reefs. Most corals reproduce sexually only during these spectacular nights. Once fertilized, the developing embryos drift with the currents, forming tiny larvae that spend days or weeks swimming before finally settling onto a hard surface and beginning the process of building a new colony. In this way, corals spread themselves across reefs, repopulating damaged areas and expanding healthy ones. Each drifting larva is a small promise that the reef will continue, a literal floating hope for the future of one of Earth's most vibrant ecosystems. Yet for all its elegance, the event also has a charming touch of absurdity. Up close, coral gamete bundles resemble tiny floating pearls, shimmering, delicate, and oddly pretty. But as they break apart and mix, the water becomes thick with biological material. Divers who swim through spawning events often describe the experience as beautiful and slightly messy, like being caught in a snowstorm made of microscopic dumplings. And yes, the water does take on a faintly odd smell, something between brine and biology. Not exactly the fragrance of romance, but certainly the fragrance of productivity. The reef after a spawning event feels different. The water carries a soft haze, the currents shift gently, and many reef creatures behave with a sleepy, satisfied sluggishness, as if the entire ecosystem just finished hosting a grand festival. And in a way, it has. This annual event is one of the most synchronized reproductive gatherings in nature, a spectacular show of cooperation among organisms that never move and never speak, yet somehow communicate with astonishing precision. What makes coral spawning so stunning is how it blends the poetic with the practical. It is beautiful but purposeful, chaotic but coordinated, delicate but vital. While we drift in our dreams back on land, whole reefs are lighting up with drifting spheres of future coral life, performing an ancient ritual beneath the moonlit surface. The ocean, once again, proves that the night is not just a time of rest. It is a stage for life, renewal, and the quiet spectacle of a world that continues in luminous, rhythmic wonder, even when no one is watching. If humans tried to sleep the way whales and dolphins do, we would fail spectacularly. We would drift into a lamppost, walk into traffic, or, in the case of a particularly determined sleepwalker, end up mowing the lawn at 3 a.m. without any memory of it. But for whales and dolphins, this is normal life. They sleep while moving, rest while breathing, and nap while staying alert, because the ocean does not allow the luxury of lying down, closing both eyes, and hoping for the best. These marine mammals live in a world where sleep cannot be a full shutdown. It must be a controlled, strategic, highly flexible state that lets them rest without ever fully disconnecting from the world around them. They have perfected the art of multitasking, and they have done it without a single cup of coffee, which, frankly, should earn them some kind of medal. To understand how whales and dolphins pull this off, you first have to understand what makes them such unusual sleepers. Unlike fish, they cannot just stop swimming and float. They need to breathe air, which means they must rise to the surface regularly, even while resting. Turning off their entire brain at once would be a very quick and very unfortunate way to drown. So instead, they developed an extraordinary ability: unihemispheric sleep. This means that only half of their brain sleeps at a time, while the other half stays awake and alert. Imagine one hemisphere slipping into a dreamlike calm while the other keeps watch, manages movement, monitors breathing, and scans for possible threats. It's like running a 2-person security team inside your own skull, alternating shifts throughout the night. In this half-sleep state, whales and dolphins float or swim slowly through the water, often in steady, gentle patterns. A dolphin might glide in a lazy arc, keeping one eye open, the eye connected to the awake half of the brain, while the other eye closes. A whale might drift in slow circles or rise and fall with a relaxed rhythm, not quite asleep, but certainly not awake in the way we understand wakefulness. The resting half of the brain gets its recovery time, while the active half ensures the animal doesn't inhale seawater, collide with anything, or get surprised by a curious predator. Calves, baby dolphins and whales sleep even more creatively because they cannot hold their breath for long and lack the strength to swim constantly. Their mothers often push them gently with their bodies, keeping them near the surface while they nap. It is one of the ocean's most tender routines, a mother whale providing the equivalent of a floating crib, nudging her calf upward every time it needs air. The mother, meanwhile, gets even less sleep than usual, proving that exhaustion among parents transcends species. Dolphins are particularly famous for their ability to stay alert for long periods. Some can remain partially awake for days or even weeks at a time, scanning their surroundings with echolocation clicks, while each brain hemisphere takes turns dipping into rest. Their bodies are built for vigilance. They rely on sound, not vision, to navigate and hunt, so even while half asleep, they can see the world around them through echoes. If a school of fish moves nearby, the awake hemisphere will know. If a large predator approaches, the dolphin will react. If nothing happens, they continue drifting in their half-dreaming state, maintaining the graceful movement that keeps them safe. Whales, being larger and more energy efficient, sleep in different styles depending on the species. Some float vertically like sleep-deprived underwater pillars, their heads near the surface as they drift in place with astonishing stillness. Others swim slowly in single file, a kind of sleepy parade where each individual catches a partial nap while following the inertial movement of the group. Sperm whales famously take power naps, actual vertical dozing bouts that last about 15 minutes at a time. Scientists once discovered a group of sperm whales in this upright rest mode and described them as resembling a drifting forest of strange trees, which is possibly the most poetic way to describe unconscious mammals with jaws full of teeth. These fragmented sleep patterns might sound exhausting to us, but for whales and dolphins, this is the life their physiology supports. Their survival depends on it. The ocean is full of both hazards and responsibilities, calves to protect, predators to evade, breathing intervals to maintain, and migration paths to follow. There is no safe place to curl up and surrender completely to dreams. Instead, sleep becomes a modular process, taken in careful segments, inserted into the flow of daily life like tiny rest stops on a never-ending swim. What makes this so extraordinary is the precision with which their brains manage the balancing act. When one hemisphere sleeps, the other maintains muscle control, environmental awareness, and breathing rhythm. Then, when it's time to switch sides, the brain transitions seamlessly. No groggy confusion, no fumbling for consciousness, no hitting a snooze button. If humans could master this art, we would all be unstoppable. We would answer emails in our sleep, watch over our households while dreaming, and wake up every morning with half our brains fresh and the other half only moderately annoyed. But alas, evolution did not hand us this talent. It reserved that particular upgrade for creatures who spend their entire lives surrounded by open water and constant motion. While we sleep deeply on land, whales and dolphins drift through their own twilight world, resting without ever fully surrendering, dreaming with one half of their mind while navigating with the other. Their nighttime routines remind us that sleep doesn't always look like stillness. Sometimes it looks like slow circles, quiet breaths, open eyes, and the graceful resilience of animals that have learned to survive in a place where rest must always remain just slightly incomplete. Sharks have the kind of reputation that makes people assume they spend their nights plotting drama. But in truth, their nocturnal activities are far more elegant and far more strategic than any horror movie soundtrack would suggest. When darkness settles across the sea, sharks don't suddenly become more aggressive, they become more precise. The night ocean is their element, a realm where their biology turns into an almost unfair advantage. While much of the marine world switches to a slower, quieter mode after sunset, sharks slip into expert stealth, gliding through near blackness with the same confidence a Roomba has when it bumps into the couch for the 10th time. Except sharks do it without bumping, without noise, and with a level of intention the Roomba could only dream of. If stealth had a mascot, it would be a shark. The first thing you notice about a shark at night, if you're lucky enough to see one, is that they do not announce themselves. There is no splash, no swirling water, no glowing marker that says predator approaching. Their bodies are engineered for silence. Their skin, coated in tiny tooth-like scales called denticles, reduces drag and muffles turbulence, allowing them to cut through the water with a refinement that would make any aerodynamic engineer swoon. Each movement is deliberate, measured, and almost eerily quiet. If the ocean were a library, sharks would be the most considerate patrons, moving silently, never drawing attention, always aware of every ripple in the room. But night brings out something even more remarkable in sharks: their sensory superpowers. Vision for them is only one tool among many, and night hunting proves it. Their eyes are equipped with a reflective layer behind the retina, called the tapetum lucidum, which bounces light back through the eye to amplify whatever faint glow exists. It's the equivalent of built-in night vision, allowing sharks to make use of even the smallest amount of moonlight, starlight, or bioluminescent flicker. Where a human would see only thick darkness, a shark might detect subtle outlines, the gentle movement of a fin, the faint shimmer of scales, or the slight shift of a fish that has not yet learned that nighttime is not a safe time for wandering. Yet sharks rely on far more than sight. They possess one of the most sensitive detection systems in the entire animal kingdom, the lateral line. This network of tiny sensory pits along their bodies picks up vibrations, pressure changes, and disturbances in the water. A fish twitching its tail sends out a wave. A crustacean bumping along the seafloor creates a pattern of microcurrents. Even the smallest movement leaves a trace in the water that sharks can read like a signature. It doesn't matter if the prey is hiding behind a rock or blending into the background. The shark will know something has moved. And then there is the shark's most mysterious sense: electroreception. Their snouts carry jelly-filled pores called ampullae of Lorenzini, which detect the faint electrical fields every living creature produces. A heartbeat, a muscle contraction, even the electric buzz of an animal's natural physiology becomes a beacon. This ability is so refined that a shark can locate prey buried under sand, literally sniffing out electricity through the seabed. At night, when vision falters and the world quiets, this sense becomes even more powerful. It turns the dark ocean into a glowing constellation of life signals, each one broadcasting quietly, unknowingly, and irresistibly to a passing shark. Different shark species employ different night hunting strategies. Reef sharks often patrol the same paths repeatedly, weaving through coral structures with practiced familiarity, much like night shift workers following their usual route. Their speed and agility let them dart into crevices, startling sleeping fish before they have time to react. Some fish try to wedge themselves into tight spaces to hide, an admirable strategy that works perfectly. unless a shark with an excellent memory happens to be cruising by. Bigger species like tiger sharks use nighttime to their advantage in a different way. The darkness masks their approach, and their slower cruising style allows them to inspect potential prey without causing alarm. They rely on patience, stealth, and an opportunistic mindset. If something edible crosses their path, they investigate. If that something makes a mistake, like moving suddenly or revealing a shine, then the shark acts. It is not recklessness, but calculation. Tiger sharks at night are not reckless thrill seekers. They are methodical inspectors working the late shift. Hammerhead sharks, with their wide, unusual heads, gain an extra nighttime advantage. The spacing of their eyes gives them a broad field of view, and their expanded snout area houses even more electroreceptors than most sharks. This design allows them to sweep the seafloor like a highly specialized metal detector. Finding animals that thought burying themselves for the night was a clever idea. One gentle pass of a hammerhead's head over the sand can reveal an entire buffet of hidden creatures. Even the ocean itself works in favor of sharks at night. Many prey species move slower in darkness, relying on stillness to avoid detection. Others bunch together in groups, hoping safety in numbers outweighs the risk of being discovered. Sharks take advantage of these patterns, timing their movements to match the behavior of the ecosystem. Their routines are shaped not by randomness, but by an intimate understanding of how the nighttime ocean breathes and shifts. The result is a hunting style so elegant that it feels almost artistic. Sharks don't rush, they glide. They don't flail or thrash. They simply accelerate when the moment arrives. Striking with a combination of speed and accuracy that happens so quickly, it rarely disturbs the water. Many prey never even realize they are being hunted until it's too late. The night hides the shark's silhouette, masks its approach, and lets its senses take over in a world where sound and light fade into obscurity. While we sleep, unaware that the sea is full of silent hunters, sharks continue their ancient nighttime routine, drifting, sensing, deciding, and feeding with a grace that belies their reputation. In the darkness, they are not monsters. They are masters of quiet precision, perfectly adapted to a world that rewards the creature that listens more than it looks. And if they happen to resemble misunderstood Roombas with teeth, well, at least they're very, very efficient ones. If you were to plunge a microphone beneath the ocean's surface at night, expecting peace, serenity, and the gentle hum of a watery lullaby, you would be in for a surprise so loud and so strange that the only logical reaction would be to yank the microphone back out and question everything you thought you knew about marine life. The nighttime ocean is not quiet. It is not calm. It is not even close to the tranquil silence that movies like to portray. Instead, it is an uncoordinated, non-stop concert of creaks, pops, crackles, hums, whistles, grunts, and mysterious murmurs. A soundscape so chaotic and persistent that if the ocean ever tried to host a meditation retreat, every participant would ask for a refund. This nighttime orchestra exists because sound travels exceptionally well underwater, moving faster and farther than it does in air. For creatures navigating the dark sea, sound becomes a crucial communication tool, a way to sense the environment and interact with neighbors they can't always see. But marine animals don't simply communicate. They produce noise constantly through feeding, movement, territorial warnings, and sometimes because their bodies just do things. Put all these noises together after sunset, when the water comes alive with activity, and you get the ocean's version of a late-night jam session, where nobody tuned their instruments and everybody insists on playing at once. One of the loudest, most unexpected contributors to this aquatic symphony is the snapping shrimp. These tiny crustaceans create a sound so sharp and so loud that it can mask the noise of far larger animals. Each snapping shrimp carries a specialized claw that works like a biological stun gun. When it snaps shut, it shoots out a bubble at high speed. This bubble collapses with a pop that produces a shockwave. Yes, an actual shockwave, loud enough to disrupt sonar and confuse nearby animals. The combined crackling of thousands of snapping shrimp creates a continuous sizzling sound, like bacon frying in a pan, somewhere deep in the ocean's kitchen. At night, as these shrimp become more active, their crackles dominate the soundscape, turning the sea into a never-ending static-filled broadcast. While snapping shrimp set the background track, fish contribute their own repertoire of noises, many of which sound delightfully ridiculous to human ears. Some fish grunt using muscles that vibrate against their swim bladders, a structure normally used for buoyancy, but clearly also moonlighting as a percussion instrument. These grunts are used to claim territory, warn rivals, or find mates, though to an outside listener, they might sound like someone repeatedly closing a squeaky door underwater. Other fish produce croaks, knocks, or pulses, each with its own purpose. And because fish are more active at night, these sounds multiply into a scattered, unpredictable chorus of underwater dialogue. Then there are the low-frequency rumbles produced by certain large fish and invertebrates. These sounds travel far and wide, drifting through the dark like deep vibrations that shimmer across the seafloor. Some species use these low notes as long-distance communication, messages sent through pressure waves in the water. Others seem to produce them unintentionally, the result of movement, feeding, or simply the mechanics of their bodies. These slow, resonant pulses add a baseline to the nighttime ocean, not unlike the distant thump of music from a club you didn't ask to be near, but can hear perfectly from 5 blocks away. But no ocean soundscape is complete without the strange, elaborate whistles and calls of marine mammals who stay active during evening hours. While whales and dolphins may not be the stars of this particular chapter, they have their own sleep schedule to manage. They still contribute to the acoustic tapestry when awake. Their whistles, clicks, and calls pierce through the darker waters like bright notes rising from the background static. These sounds may be used for communication, navigation, or maintaining social contact as groups shift through the water in loosely organized patterns. At night, these vocalizations travel even farther, bouncing between layers and creating echoes that ripple across great distances. The result of all these noises isn't just an auditory curiosity, it shapes life in the ocean. Many species rely on the nighttime soundscape to orient themselves, to track prey or predators, or to find members of their group. Some creatures actively seek out busy acoustic zones, drawn to areas where the crackling and grunting indicate a thriving community. Others avoid them, preferring quiet patches where the noise of snapping shrimp won't drown out the subtle cues they depend on. Even humans studying the ocean have learned that nighttime listening reveals things daytime recordings miss. Many species become more vocal or more active after dark, making the hours of dusk and night prime time for acoustic monitoring. Hydrophones, underwater microphones, capture the shifting patterns of sound, allowing scientists to detect migrations, feeding events, and even the presence of species that never approach the surface. The ocean at night is like an audiobook with too many narrators, all reading different chapters at the same time, none aware the others exist. And then there are the mysterious sounds, noises picked up by researchers that have no obvious source. Hums, booms, trills, or modulating tones that seem to drift through the darkness, without explanation. Some of these have later been traced to volcanic activity, underwater landslides, or ice shifting in polar regions. Others are produced by animals still waiting to be identified. The night ocean, with its deep shadows and vast distances, is an ideal setting for acoustic riddles, many of which remain unsolved even after decades of study. What's most remarkable about this midnight orchestra is that it thrives without structure. There is no conductor tapping a baton, no coordinated melody, no rhythm section keeping time. It is a collection of individual noises, each purposeful in its own tiny context, that merge into something larger, something chaotic, something strangely beautiful. While we sleep, the ocean hums, pops, clicks, and grunts into the darkness, filling its vast spaces with sound that moves through water like ghost music. The nighttime ocean may look still from above, but its soundscape tells a different story, one of non-stop movement, secret conversations, and constant, audible life. It is an orchestra no one asked for, performing every night without fail, reminding us that even in darkness, the sea never stops speaking. When the sun dips below the horizon, most people think of temperature changes in terms of, finally, the pavement won't melt my shoes. But in the ocean, that daily cooling triggers a chain reaction so intricate and so essential that it affects everything from microscopic plants to gigantic marine predators. Nightfall doesn't simply darken the water, it alters its structure, its chemistry, and the way it moves. It's the ocean's nightly ritual of tidying up, shuffling layers, nudging nutrients around, and making subtle adjustments that keep its entire ecosystem functioning. If the daytime ocean is a bustling living room full of activity, the nighttime ocean is a quiet moment when someone sneaks in and rearranges the furniture, puts a few things back where they belong, and maybe dusts a shelf or two. Only the someone is physics and chemistry, and the room is a global body of water the size of a planet. The first major shift happens with temperature. During the day, the sun's energy warms the surface waters, creating a warm, buoyant layer that sits like a cozy blanket on top of the cooler, denser depths. This warm top layer tends to be stable, resisting mixing with the colder water below. But when darkness falls and the surface begins to cool, that stability weakens. Cooler water becomes heavier, and as it sinks, it nudges deeper water upward in a process known as nighttime convection. It's not dramatic, no swirling whirlpools or churning turbulence, nothing that would catch your eye from a boat. But beneath the surface, temperature-driven currents quietly shuffle the upper layers, blending them in ways that the heat of day refuses to allow. This mixing has major implications. The deep ocean holds a tremendous store of nutrients, materials released from sinking organic matter, decaying organisms, and countless processes happening far below the light. Under normal daytime conditions, these nutrients stay trapped in the depths, separated from the sunlit layer where phytoplankton, tiny plant-like organisms, live and photosynthesize. But nighttime convection gives the ocean a chance to move things around. It's like someone gently lifting the corner of a thick blanket, letting the cooler air beneath drift upward. Nutrients that spent the day stuck below the warm surface layer now have a pathway upward, where they become available to the organisms waiting above. This nighttime nutrient lift isn't dramatic enough to create visible clouds or plumes, but it does enrich the surface waters with the chemical ingredients necessary for life. Nitrogen compounds, phosphates, trace minerals, and dissolved carbon substances drift into shallower levels, forming a richer broth for the countless microorganisms that rely on them. While the plankton discussed earlier rise from below to feed at night, The nutrients rising from even deeper layers take a slower, more subtle journey. They don't create sudden bursts of life, but they do quietly support the next day's productivity. Without that nightly stirring, the surface ocean would lose much of its biological spark within weeks. Chemical changes accompany these movements. As the surface cools, gases dissolve more easily in the water. Oxygen concentrations subtly increase, allowing nighttime organisms, particularly those that rely on respiration rather than photosynthesis, to breathe more comfortably. Carbon dioxide levels shift too, absorbed from the atmosphere in slightly greater amounts during cooler hours. This daily breathing motion of the ocean helps regulate global carbon cycles, even if it's happening molecule by molecule. Below the surface, deeper layers respond to nighttime cooling in their own way. Some areas experience what's called internal waves, massive, slow-moving waves that roll deep beneath the surface, invisible from above. These internal waves push colder, nutrient-rich water into new regions, nudging chemical boundaries and redistributing dissolved substances in ways that shape the landscape of the sea. They act like underwater movers, shifting furniture in slow motion, rearranging everything from the location of nutrients to the temperature gradient that defines marine layers. In coastal areas, the temperature drop after sunset can also influence upwelling, where deeper water rises toward the shore. While wind patterns usually drive upwelling, nighttime cooling enhances the process by strengthening density differences between layers. The result is a quiet but steady delivery of nutrients to coastal ecosystems, feeding kelp forests, nourishing fish nurseries, and sustaining entire communities that depend on these chemical inputs. Many coastal species time their nighttime activities, feeding, mating, drifting, to coincide with these gentle shifts in water chemistry. Even the pH, or acidity, of the ocean undergoes slight changes at night. During the day, photosynthetic organisms suck carbon dioxide out of the water to make organic material, raising the pH and making the water slightly less acidic. At night, these organisms switch to respiration, releasing carbon dioxide back into the water and nudging acidity upward. It's a subtle shift, nothing that would alarm the average fish, but enough to influence metabolic rates, enzyme activity, and the chemical balance of the water. These tiny oscillations follow a daily rhythm, shaping the conditions for bacteria, plankton, and other tiny but essential residents. The nighttime cooling and mixing also rejuvenate the boundary layer where the ocean meets the atmosphere. Slight temperature differences create gentle breezes and modify evaporation rates. These changes, in turn, affect humidity, local weather patterns, and even cloud formation. It's a powerful reminder that what happens in the ocean at night doesn't stay there. It radiates outward, touching the sky above and the climate surrounding it. From the perspective of marine life, these chemical and physical changes form a backdrop for nighttime behavior. Creatures may not consciously understand convection or pH shifts, but they can sense the changes. Some species rise into the cooler, oxygen-rich upper layers to feed or migrate. Others retreat deeper as temperature cues signal the end of certain activities. Every small motion they make is influenced by this nightly rearranging of the ocean's chemistry. While we sleep, all of this unfolds silently, rhythmically, and endlessly. A nightly calibration ensuring that the ocean remains stable enough to support the millions of organisms that depend on it. It isn't dramatic like glowing plankton, or thrilling like a nighttime hunt, but it is just as essential. The ocean breathes, mixes, cools, and reorganizes itself, as if preparing for the next day's performance. In a world defined by tides, currents, and cycles, even darkness becomes part of the ocean's long, patient routine of keeping life running. When the sun disappears and the ocean sinks into its nightly darkness, most of the creatures within it lose their primary navigation tool, light. To humans, this would be the moment we trip over furniture we swore wasn't there 5 minutes ago. But to marine animals, this is routine. They live in a world where night isn't just a time of day, it's a state of being. And if they want to get anywhere without crashing into a coral head or wandering 100 miles off route, they need strategies far more sophisticated than eyesight. Some rely on magnetic fields, others on pressure, others on internal clocks so accurate they make wristwatches look like unreliable souvenirs. And then there are the animals, whose navigation skills can only be described as educated guesswork supported by a heroic amount of confidence. Consider first the animals that navigate using Earth's magnetic field. Sea turtles, salmon, certain sharks, and even some tiny drifting organisms carry sensory systems tuned to the invisible magnetic forces surrounding our planet. These animals don't see magnetic fields the way we see colours, but they sense them as orientation cues. Subtle inclinations, intensities, and gradients that tell them where they are and which direction to go. A young sea turtle, fresh out of its egg, begins its life, already wired, with a magnetic map. As it paddles into the dark ocean, that map helps it stay on a path that eventually leads across entire basins. If humans had that ability, road trips would be considerably easier, and GPS manufacturers would be very upset. Some species can detect magnetic fields through specialized cells containing crystals of magnetite, a naturally magnetic mineral. These crystals act like tiny compasses inside the body, shifting in response to Earth's geomagnetic lines. When the animal moves through the water, these microscopic compasses tug on nearby sensory nerves, sending signals that help the creature interpret its position in three-dimensional space. It's as if evolution handed them a built-in navigation app that does not crash, lose signal, or require an update mid-swim. Not all animals rely on magnetism. Some specialize in reading pressure changes. Because water pressure increases with depth, many marine species have learned to detect even the smallest variations in the water around them. This allows them to maintain a specific depth while traveling through complete darkness, like people walking through their homes at night with their hands extended, except significantly more graceful and without the risk of stepping on a forgotten toy. Eels are famous for this kind of navigation. They glide through the nighttime sea using pressure gradients, the way hikers use trail markers. When they sense a slight change, just a modest shift in the weight of water pressing around them, they adjust course. Their bodies act like flexible barometers, reading environmental cues we could never perceive. These subtle signals guide them across tremendous distances, helping them find spawning grounds or feeding areas, even when the seafloor beneath them offers no visible guidance. Then there are species that rely on scent trails, chemical gradients dissolved in the water. At night, when vision falters and darkness stretches beyond reach, chemical cues remain reliable. A shark, detecting the faint, drifting smell of a stressed fish, knows which direction that fish last swam. A snail on the seafloor follows a winding pathway of chemical molecules left behind by potential prey. Even microscopic organisms respond to scent cues, orienting themselves toward nutrient-rich zones that grow more detectable after sunset. These creatures are, in their own tiny way, performing the marine version of follow your nose, only with considerably more accuracy than any cereal mascot ever demonstrated. Sound also becomes a nighttime navigation tool. While humans tend to think of the ocean as a vast, silent place, Animals perceive it as an acoustic landscape filled with cues, distant rumbling currents, clicking crustaceans, the subtle sound of waves filtering down from the surface. Many species use these patterns to orient themselves. Reef fish, for example, can detect the sound signatures of their home reefs, each reef producing a blend of snaps, crackles, and biological noise, unique enough to act as an address. As night falls and visibility drops, young fish use these acoustic fingerprints to guide themselves back to familiar territory. It's less like echolocation and more like walking toward a distant party because you recognize the music. Some of the most impressive navigators, however, rely on circadian and lunar rhythms, internal clocks that tell them where they should be at a given hour, regardless of what they can see. These timekeepers are shaped by millions of years of environmental cycles. Migrating animals that move only at night often synchronize their travel with the position of the moon, the pull of tides, or predictable currents. Even when clouds obscure moonlight and the sea appears uniformly dark, these internal clocks keep the animals aligned, with roots passed down through generations. And then there are creatures whose navigation methods can best be described as wonderfully chaotic. Many tiny animals drifting through the water at night don't follow precise maps or cues. They move with a kind of biological optimism, adjusting their motion based on trial and error feedback, constantly sampling the water, making subtle corrections, and trusting that evolution has given them enough instinct to get where they need to go. Their strategy is a blend of physics, randomness, and sensory guesswork. But it works because the ocean's currents, chemistry, and temperature gradients reward those who adapt fluidly to shifting conditions rather than rely on rigid plans. Despite the complexity of these navigational techniques, marine animals carry them out effortlessly. There is no hesitation, no anxious double-checking, no moment of doubt. While we sleep on land, far removed from the silent decisions unfolding beneath waves, the ocean becomes a realm of travelers, moving through darkness with extraordinary skill. Some follow magnetic lines with the confidence of ancient explorers. Others glide along pressure cues or chemical trails. Some rely on acoustic landmarks, while others navigate through an internal rhythm, older than the continents themselves. In a world where the sun cannot help them, these creatures have learned to read the night in ways we can hardly imagine. Their movements are not just survival, they are navigation as an art form, etched into the very fabric of their biology. If jellyfish had a motto, it would probably be something like, "Move slowly, sting quietly, and look fabulous while doing it." These drifting enigmas spend their days hovering in deeper, cooler waters, conserving energy and avoiding the chaotic bustle of surface life. But once night spreads across the ocean, jellyfish undergo a transformation, not in shape or colour, but in behaviour. They begin to rise, pulsing upward in rhythmic waves, joining vast nighttime gatherings that look less like organised migrations and more like a glowing, slow-motion dance party thrown by creatures who never learned the difference between choreography and floating aimlessly. The first thing you notice about jellyfish at night is their motion. Their signature pulse, the gentle contracting and releasing of their bell, becomes more steady, almost purposeful. During the day, they move only when necessary, drifting with whatever currents carry them. But at night, many species increase their activity, swimming upward in a kind of vertical parade. This ascent brings them closer to the surface where microscopic prey becomes abundant, especially as other creatures have stirred nutrients and tiny organisms into the upper layers. To jellyfish, nighttime is not just a time to feed, it's a time when feeding becomes easier, safer, and more worth the effort of actual swimming. Though jellyfish are far from efficient swimmers, they move with the determination of someone wading through a pool full of thick pudding. Their bodies are engineered to make the most of every pulse. Their gelatinous bells contract with minimal energy, using elasticity rather than muscle strength. This efficiency means they can ascend long distances with little strain, a crucial advantage for creatures that lack the streamlined design of more athletic swimmers. At night, this upward journey feels particularly mesmerizing. Thousands of bell-shaped bodies rising slowly, drifting like enchanted lanterns, guided by instincts older than complex bones. As they approach the surface, jellyfish begin to form gatherings that scientists call blooms, though the word bloom feels almost too gentle for the scale involved. These swarms can cover enormous areas, stretching for kilometers and containing millions of individuals. From above, a bloom may resemble a thick veil of drifting organisms, each one moving independently, yet collectively creating a unified, hypnotic display. From within, it can look like the ocean decided to cosplay as a retro lava lamp, with translucent bodies pulsing in slow waves, gently bumping into one another, then drifting apart without complaint. And while blooms can form during the day, they often become larger and more active at night. This nocturnal expansion results from a combination of environmental cues: cooler surface temperatures, abundant plankton, reduced visibility to predators, and shifts in gentle nighttime currents. Jellyfish, being simple organisms without advanced sensory systems, rely heavily on these surrounding conditions. They cannot see the darkness, but they feel the change through temperature and water chemistry. They don't hear the nighttime activity around them, but they sense turbulence through their delicate bodies. They move upward, not because they choose to, but because evolution programmed them to respond to signals of opportunity. One of the remarkable features of jellyfish behavior at night is how different species gather without ever coordinating. Moon jellies, comb jellies, and more exotic varieties can find themselves drifting near the same surface areas, creating multi-species assemblages that reflect the ocean's diversity. Some species glow faintly with bioluminescence, their bodies lighting up with small flashes triggered by disturbances. The result is a shimmering field of gentle sparks across the water, tiny fireworks produced by creatures who aren't even aware they're glowing. If jellyfish have an aesthetic, it's accidental beauty. At the individual level, nighttime behavior varies significantly. Some jellyfish pulse vigorously to stay in the richest feeding zones. Others float motionless for long stretches, extending their tentacles like silent, drifting nets. A few species hunt more actively at night, using their tentacles not just as stinging filaments, but as wide-reaching foraging tools. After dark, prey organisms swim closer to the surface, many of them small and unsuspecting. Jellyfish take full advantage of this, capturing plankton with the delicate, sticky cells that line their tentacles. Cells that trigger on contact and immobilize prey, with surprising efficiency for creatures that look like drifting bags of jelly. Even their predators respond differently at night. Sea turtles, certain large fish, and some birds feed on jellyfish, but their visual advantage shrinks after sunset. Jellyfish, translucent and ghost-like, become harder to distinguish in the darkness. Their soft bodies also make them difficult to hear or detect through turbulence. Darkness doesn't make jellyfish invincible, far from it. But it does tilt the odds in their favor. Nighttime reduces the risk of being spotted long enough for them to feast, reproduce, and continue their quiet ascent. Reproduction itself can also be tied to nighttime cues. Some jellyfish release their reproductive materials after sunset, letting currents carry their eggs and sperm across the water. The darkness offers a layer of protection, reducing the number of predators that recognize these drifting signals as delicacies. If coral spawning is a coordinated spectacle, jellyfish reproduction is much more understated, relying on chance and sheer numbers rather than precision timing. Yet the night still enhances their chances, offering an environment where delicate biological processes unfold with slightly less interference. Large blooms at night can dramatically alter the environment around them. As jellyfish feed in enormous numbers, they consume vast quantities of plankton, subtly shifting the balance of the ecosystem. Their drifting bodies slow currents, manipulate small-scale water flow, and even affect oxygen levels in dense swarms. While jellyfish are some of the simplest animals in the ocean, lacking brains, bones, and any clear sense of direction, they are also capable of collectively shaping their surroundings in ways that scientists still work to understand. To witness jellyfish rising at night is to watch the ocean breathe in a different rhythm. The scene is both eerie and peaceful, simultaneously quiet and full of motion. These creatures, lacking the complexity of vision, coordination, or sound, nonetheless create one of the most visually magical night behaviors in the ocean. They pulse, drift, and gather, not with intelligence, but with an ancient, embedded understanding of the sea's cycles. While we sleep, unaware of the luminous gatherings taking place beneath the waves, jellyfish rise like dream fragments, delicate pulsing shapes drifting upward in slow harmony. They gather in shimmering swarms that transform the ocean into an otherworldly landscape, reminding us that even the simplest creatures can create moments of breathtaking beauty without ever trying, without ever knowing, and without ever stopping their slow, upward pulse through the dark. If the ocean had a night shift dedicated entirely to cleanliness, recycling, and opportunistic snacking, the seafloor scavengers would be the crew clocking in. These creatures do not get the glory of the daytime hunters or the glimmer of the surface drifters. They do not glow, streak, or pulse in elegant migrations. Instead, they work quietly along the bottom, sweeping across the sediment in search of whatever edible item the ocean has misplaced. They are the vacuum cleaners of the abyss, the custodians of the continental shelf, the gritty little interns of the dark seafloor who show up every night with one mission: find the leftovers before somebody bigger does. When night settles across the ocean, the seafloor undergoes a shift that feels almost like a dimly lit cafeteria after hours. Predators finish their meals, wounded animals settle into hiding places, and small bits of organic debris drift downward through the water column. Some of this debris is microscopic, some is unidentifiable, and some is very clearly the remains of a creature that was, moments earlier, minding its own business before becoming a snack for something larger. Gravity has no favourites. Everything eventually drifts downward, and waiting below, like a patient but enthusiastic cleanup crew, are the scavengers. Crabs, brittle stars, sea cucumbers, amphipods, isopods, and certain species of fish are among the most active nighttime foragers on the seafloor. They emerge from burrows, crevices, and hiding spots the moment the darkness thickens, sensing through chemical cues that food may be nearby. Many rely on chemoreception, an ability to detect faint molecules drifting through the water or clinging to sediment. These cues act like a neon sign advertising, "Something delicious just died somewhere over there." And the scavengers respond faster than anyone expects, from creatures with tiny legs and underwhelming cardiovascular enthusiasm. Take crabs, for instance. During the day, many crab species stay tucked beneath rocks or disguised against the seafloor, watching the world go by through narrow, cautious peaks. But at night, their behavior changes completely. Suddenly, they become bold explorers, scuttling across the sediment in confident arcs. Their claws, which seem so delicate in the daylight, swing like investigative tools, probing the seafloor for edible particles. A crab can detect food from remarkable distances by sensing faint chemical gradients. And when it finds something, it approaches with a kind of triumphant urgency. An "I found it first" energy that would not be out of place at a clearance sale. Amphipods and isopods, those tiny crustaceans shaped like fast-moving commas, are even more committed. They swarm onto food items with astonishing speed, covering them like bustling dots in the dark. Their ability to detect dead or decaying matter is so strong that they can sense it from meters away despite their tiny size. When they arrive, they waste absolutely no time. Efficiency is their trademark. If the ocean floor were a buffet, they'd be the guests already holding plates before the food trays even hit the table. Sea cucumbers, though slower and more reflective in attitude, also join the nighttime sweep. These elongated, squishy creatures crawl across the sediment with an unhurried determination, using tentacle-like appendages to shovel loose material into their mouths. They are not picky. Microbes, detritus, tiny fragments of organic matter. If it fits, it feeds. A single sea cucumber can process an impressive amount of sediment in a night, cleaning and recycling nutrients back into the ecosystem. They are the ocean's intestinal tract, quietly digesting whatever drifts within reach. Brittle stars add a touch of elegance to the scavenging scene. With long, slender arms radiating from a central disc, they move across the seafloor in mesmerizing patterns, like silent star-shaped dancers foraging in choreographed spirals. They use their arms to sense vibrations and pick up chemical cues, making them surprisingly adept at detecting food. When they find something worth eating, they curl their arms around it, bringing it toward their mouth with a grace that puts many other scavengers to shame. Some fish species also join the nighttime cleanup. Hagfish, for example, those infamous eel-like creatures known for producing slime, are perhaps the most dramatic scavengers of all. They glide along the seafloor, sniffing out carcasses buried in the sediment. When they find decomposing flesh, they burrow into it headfirst, using their tooth-like structures to rasp bits off. The slime is their defense mechanism, not their meal strategy, but it comes in handy when other predators try to steal their dinner. Few animals want to fight a creature that can turn its immediate surroundings into a gelatinous mess in seconds. These seafloor scavengers play a critical role in maintaining the health of the ecosystem. Without them, the ocean bottom would accumulate an endless rain of organic material, layers upon layers of death and debris that would quickly alter the chemistry and oxygen levels of the environment. Scavengers break down this material before it becomes a problem, recycling nutrients back into the water and sediment. Their nightly activities make it possible for countless other organisms to survive and thrive. In many ways, they are nature's recyclers, processing the ocean's waste into new opportunities for growth. What's especially fascinating is the coordination that emerges without any deliberate communication. Multiple species converge on the same food sources, each playing its part in the decomposition process. Some nibble the flesh, others scrape the bones, others digest the surrounding sediment. It is not cooperation in the intentional sense. It's simply the alignment of evolved behaviors. But from a distance, it looks remarkably like teamwork. The quiet kind, the kind that happens after dark in a place where nobody is watching, except the occasional passing fish, with no strong opinions on the matter. Even though their work is unseen and unsung, seafloor scavengers shape the ocean in profound ways. They prevent decay from piling up. They recycle essential nutrients. They support the stability of ecosystems that stretch far beyond their tiny territories. And they do it with a diligence that would make any supervisor proud. While we dream peacefully on solid ground, unaware of the world beneath the waves, the ocean floor becomes a silent realm of movement, claws probing, tentacles sweeping, tiny legs racing, bodies rolling across the sediment in a patient, deliberate march. The scavengers emerge, not with glamour or glow, but with quiet determination. They collect, clean, and consume, turning the leftovers of the ocean's daily drama into fuel for the next cycle of life. Their efforts might not sparkle like bioluminescence or impress like a predator's hunt, but without them, the ocean simply wouldn't function. If you could shrink yourself to the size of a grain of sand and hitch a ride on a drifting particle in the nighttime ocean, you would witness one of the most important daily processes happening on our planet, and one of the least appreciated. Every night, countless microscopic organisms descend through the dark water column carrying carbon with them, performing a job so critical that without it, Earth's atmosphere would feel like it had been trapped under a heavy blanket of greenhouse gases. These creatures do not glow, sing, or make grand movements. They do not hunt dramatically or perform synchronized rituals. Their superpower is far simpler. They sink, and in sinking, they are quietly rearranging the planet's carbon inventory, one microscopic package at a time. The story begins at the surface of the ocean during the day, when sunlight fuels photosynthesis. Tiny organisms called phytoplankton, most no bigger than a speck, use sunlight to convert carbon dioxide into organic matter. They grow, divide, and fill the upper water with microscopic life. Some of these phytoplankton are eaten almost immediately by zooplankton and other small consumers. Others die naturally. Still others clump together into sticky aggregates known as marine snow, named not for its temperature, but for the slow, steady way it drifts downward like flakes that can't be bothered to fall quickly. When night arrives, the entire system shifts. Many of the creatures responsible for moving carbon deeper into the ocean become more active, either feeding more aggressively, migrating downward, or attaching themselves to sinking particles. It's in these hours of darkness that the ocean's biological conveyor belt comes alive, a process scientists call the biological pump. If the daytime ocean is a factory producing organic carbon, the nighttime ocean is the shipping department, packaging that carbon and sending it to a destination far beneath the surface. The tiny delivery drivers of the night take many forms. Zooplankton, those drifting animals that earlier rose toward the surface in massive nightly migrations, now play a different role on their descent. After dining on phytoplankton, they metabolize the carbon-rich food and release waste pellets, tiny, dense, nutrient-packed spheres that sink like microscopic stones. These pellets, despite their unglamorous origins, are among the most efficient carbon transporters in the ocean. Heavy enough to fall steadily, they can descend hundreds of meters in just a few days, carrying with them the carbon that once floated near the surface. Marine snow adds another layer to the story. These slow-falling bundles consist of mucus, dead cells, microbial colonies, and other organic detritus. While the phrase mucus-based snowflake may not be the most poetic, these aggregates are essential. They trap carbon within their sticky webs, gathering particles as they drift downward. At night, many microorganisms latch onto marine snow, feeding, reproducing, or hitching a ride to deeper waters. Each passing hour allows the aggregates to grow larger, heavier, and more capable of sinking into the depths. As they fall, the pressure increases, temperatures drop, and the surrounding water becomes darker and denser. Still they continue, pulling carbon farther from the surface with every centimetre of descent. This vertical movement is not just gravity's doing, it's biology's intention. Many microscopic organisms actively migrate downward after feeding near the surface at night. They carry carbon within their bodies, and when they respire or release waste at deeper levels, they transfer that carbon into new layers of the ocean. This process may seem subtle, but the cumulative effect is enormous. Multiply this by trillions of organisms across every ocean basin, every night, and you have one of the largest and most important daily movements of carbon on Earth. The deeper the carbon sinks, the longer it remains stored. Carbon transported into the twilight zone, hundreds of meters below the surface, can stay there for years or decades. If it falls into the midnight zone or the deep abyss, that carbon may remain trapped for centuries or even millennia. In this way, microscopic organisms regulate the atmosphere with the diligence of workers who don't take breaks, don't complain, and don't unionize, even though they absolutely should, given the workload. But this nightly cycle is not constant. It changes with the seasons, with temperature shifts, and with the composition of ocean life. Some regions produce more marine snow, others rely more heavily on zooplankton pellets. Certain ecosystems have organisms that sink faster than others, creating hotspots of carbon transport. The deeper the ecosystem, the more diverse and complex these processes become. Even bacteria play a major role, clinging to sinking particles and consuming half the carbon before it reaches great depths. They act like customs agents at a border crossing, inspecting the cargo and deciding which parts get to pass through. Despite this constant consumption, a significant fraction of carbon still survives the journey downward. Only a small portion reaches the seafloor, but that portion matters. Once there, it becomes buried in sediment, locked away in layers of minerals and sand. Some of this carbon will remain trapped for tens of thousands of years, kept from returning to the atmosphere. Without this burial pipeline, Earth would experience far more extreme temperature swings, far more carbon dioxide accumulation, and far less predictability in climate patterns. What makes the ocean's nighttime carbon transport particularly fascinating is how dependent it is on darkness. During the day, many carbon-carrying organisms remain deep to avoid predators. At night, they rise to feed, then return to depth carrying fresh carbon in their bodies. Without this daily rhythm of rising and sinking, the entire biological pump would lose its efficiency. Night provides safety for feeding, day provides pressure for retreat, and together they form a cycle as old as the first drifting plankton. While we sleep, unaware of the microscopic deliveries taking place beneath the waves, the ocean is performing its nightly accounting, collecting carbon, packaging it in organisms and particles, and sending it downward like the world's most dedicated postal system. No trucks, no labels, no tracking numbers, just gravity and biology working in an elegant partnership. And though these tiny couriers may never receive recognition, they are among the greatest climate engineers on Earth, silently shaping our atmosphere through their nightly descent into the dark. Long before humans invented calendars or tried to blame the full moon for questionable decisions, the ocean had already been synchronizing its rhythms to lunar light. The moon is not just a pretty decoration hanging above the waves. It is one of the most influential forces in marine life. Its glow, its phases, its gravitational pull, and even its absence shape behaviors in animals that have never once looked upward and thought, that's a nice view. Marine creatures respond not to the beauty of the moon, but to its utility. A steady rhythm keeper, a faint lantern, and, at times, a giant spotlight that flips a switch in the brains and bodies of animals across the sea. Moonlight, dim as it might seem to us, carries deep significance underwater. Even a sliver of the moon can penetrate the upper layers of the ocean, creating gradients of light that many species use as a guiding beacon. For migrating animals, this glow becomes a directional cue, telling them which way is up, which way is open water, and whether it's safe to make certain movements. Tiny zooplankton drifting near the surface during their nightly rise are sensitive to the slightest change in lunar brightness. On brighter nights, many of them stay a bit deeper, relying on the faint lunar shimmer to avoid becoming silhouettes for hungry predators. The moon acts like a natural dimmer switch, subtly adjusting how far upward certain creatures dare to travel. Fish also listen carefully to the moon's light signals, even if their version of listening involves highly tuned photoreceptors rather than ears. Some species time their feeding to darker nights, taking advantage of reduced visibility. Others feed more boldly under moonlit conditions, using the extra clarity to spot prey moving through the shallows. Some large predators prefer the concealment of new moon darkness, while others treat full moons like hunting holidays. The moon's phases create ripple effects across marine food webs, shaping who eats, who hides, who moves, and who stays suspiciously still. For many species, moonlight doesn't just influence their meal times, it dictates major life events. Several types of fish coordinate spawning with the lunar cycle. Instead of using temperature or time of year alone, they rely on specific moon phases to trigger synchronized reproduction. These events may not be as flashy as coral spawning, but they are just as intricately timed. The phase of the moon determines when they gather, where they swim, and how they release eggs or sperm. It's nature's version of scheduling a group project, except everybody actually shows up on time. Some marine worms take lunar timing to exceptional levels of commitment. They undergo remarkable body changes leading up to certain moon phases, transforming themselves into reproductive forms that rise toward the surface to release eggs and sperm, all timed precisely to the moon's schedule. These worms essentially use moonlight as a biological calendar reminder. Big transformation event coming up. Don't be late. Their synchronization is so reliable that you could practically set a clock to their mass emergence. Moonlight also shapes behavior on the seafloor. Burrow-dwelling creatures, from shrimp to bottom-feeding fish, adjust their nightly foraging based on how bright the water above them becomes. A bright full moon can mean more predators patrolling the upper layers, so seafloor animals may remain tucked away, waiting for the safety of a darker night. Meanwhile, other species emerge more boldly under moonlight, using the silvery glow to navigate terrain that would be pitch black otherwise. For them, the moon becomes a headlamp shining through the water, illuminating the landscape without revealing too much of their presence. But perhaps the most dramatic lunar influence occurs in animals that use the moon as a spotlight, not for hunting or hiding, but for performance. Some species of squid rise to the surface in astonishing numbers during full moons, responding to the brightness like stage performers waiting for their cue. Their bodies reflect and refract the moonlight, creating a shimmering spectacle as they dart and twist near the surface. Whether they are feeding, mating, or simply participating in a nightly burst of activity, they do so with a brilliance that would make any director proud. Sea turtles are another category of lunar enthusiasts. For hatchlings making the sprint from sand to sea, moonlight becomes a guide that tells them where the ocean is. They orient toward the brighter horizon, trusting the glow reflected off the water. Once in the ocean, young turtles continue to use lunar light patterns to orient themselves, swimming toward the open sea with instincts shaped by 1 billion years of planetary cycles. Even adult turtles respond to moon phases, timing breeding migrations with lunar cues that align currents, tides, and navigation routes. And then there are creatures whose reactions to moonlight defy simple explanation. Some species of plankton flash more frequently under full moons, possibly responding to increased predators or to the altered behavior of nearby organisms. Certain fish schooling patterns shift dramatically, with groups becoming more tightly packed during bright nights. Sharks, those stoic nighttime hunters, sometimes alter their movement patterns, depending on the clarity provided by moonlight, adjusting routes or depth preferences based on how much illumination filters down. The moon's influence is not limited to what we can see. Even in deeper regions where moonlight barely penetrates, its effect can still be felt through the behavior of organisms living closer to the surface. Their movement patterns create a cascading effect, shaping the layers beneath them. In this sense, the moon acts as a conductor of a vast, multi-tiered symphony, a faint signal that orchestrates responses across the entire water column. While we gaze at the full moon and admire its glow, unaware of anything except maybe a desire to take a dramatic nighttime photo, the ocean is responding with a choreography of migrations, feedings, emergencies, and retreats. Creatures large and small treat the moon as a guide, a warning, a spotlight, or a metronome. To them, it is not mystical or poetic. It is practical. It dictates timing, sets boundaries, and provides structure in a world where darkness is the norm. In the nighttime ocean, moonlight becomes more than a reflection on waves. It becomes a signal that shapes life itself. The ocean at night should be a place of ancient rhythms, dark migrations, quiet hunts, and tiny glowing signals flickering like secret messages across the water. But in the last century, humans have unintentionally added themselves to the cast of nighttime ocean characters. And we show up with all the subtlety of someone barging into a library shouting about discounted snacks. Ships, ports, fishing vessels, offshore development, and the endless glow of coastal cities have transformed the nighttime sea into an environment where artificial light and noise spill into places that evolved under deep quiet and steady darkness. For many marine animals already struggling with survival in a world where finding dinner and not becoming dinner are daily concerns, our nighttime presence complicates everything. Let's start with lights. Bright, unrelenting, and often pointed where no light was ever meant to be. The ocean's darkness is not an inconvenience for its residents. It is a habitat. Countless species depend on predictable night conditions to feed, migrate, mate, and hide. But human-made light behaves differently from moonlight or bioluminescence. It is intense. It pierces deep. It doesn't follow natural cycles or soften with clouds. It turns patches of the sea into accidental stage sets, spotlighting creatures that would rather stay invisible. Many fish, especially those that migrate vertically or feed near the surface, become drawn to artificial lights. They mistake them for environmental cues, clustering around illuminated areas the way insects hover around a porch lamp, only with significantly higher stakes. Predators soon learn these glowing zones are easy hunting grounds. The fish, dazzled and confused, lose the ability to blend into the night. In some regions, entire feeding behaviors shift because a single bright vessel is enough to disrupt the usual flow of the nocturnal food web. Squid are particularly sensitive to light. In darkness, they move with stealth and confidence, but under bright ship lights, they gather in disoriented schools. This behavior is so predictable that some fisheries use strong lamps to intentionally lure squid toward boats. For the squid, it's like wandering into a very suspicious nightclub where the music has been replaced by engines, and the exit doors keep getting farther away. Their natural rhythms flatten into panic-driven clustering, and the species that hunt them, many marine mammals and deep-diving predators, find their patterns disrupted as well. Artificial lighting also interferes with coastal life. Hatchling sea turtles depend on the relative brightness of the moonlit horizon to guide them to the ocean. When beachfront developments light up the shore, these hatchlings crawl inland instead, heading toward parking lots and buildings in a tragic reversal of natural instinct. Those that do reach the sea may find themselves swimming into brightly lit harbours where predators gather. A task that should be instinctively simple becomes a dangerous obstacle course created by human choices. Moving from light to noise, we find another major influence. The ocean's nighttime quiet is regularly interrupted by the mechanical growls, rumbles, and hums of human machinery. Ships, especially large cargo vessels, generate low-frequency sounds that travel astonishing distances underwater. To us, the noises may be dull background rumble, but to marine animals who navigate by sound, these vibrations can feel like trying to have a conversation next to an airport runway. Whales and dolphins, who rely heavily on echolocation, are among the most affected. Their nighttime environment is meant to be a pristine acoustic landscape where clicks, whistles, and low calls travel cleanly. Add ship noise, and it becomes a blur of overlapping vibrations. Some species respond by calling louder, a behavior scientists call acoustic compensation. It's the oceanic equivalent of raising your voice at a loud party, except the party never ends and the neighbors never stop shouting. Noise also causes avoidance behavior. Some whales alter migration routes to steer clear of busy shipping lanes. Others move away from feeding grounds they've relied on for generations, simply because the noise has become unbearable. For animals that must conserve energy and navigate long distances, detours are more than inconvenient. They can be costly. Fish, too, suffer from nighttime noise pollution. Many species use sound to detect predators or communicate with others in their group. When engines thrum overhead, these signals become muffled or lost entirely. Fish may freeze, flee prematurely, or misinterpret danger cues. For species that rely on nighttime gatherings or coordinated movements, noise can break apart their social structures, like a constant, unseen disturbance. Even the seafloor isn't spared. Activities like trawling, dredging, and deep-sea mining continue into the night, stirring sediment clouds and disrupting bottom-dwelling species that emerge after dark. Scavengers, which normally rely on chemical cues to find food, struggle when sediment gets churned into thick cloudy plumes, masking the signals they depend on. The noise of machinery above them adds another layer of confusion. Imagine trying to find your dinner in a smoke-filled room while someone runs a vacuum cleaner right next to your head. It's about that pleasant. Light and noise together create a nighttime environment that no longer reflects the natural cycles marine animals evolved to follow. Migratory cues become distorted. Communication becomes strained. Feeding windows shift unpredictably. Even reproductive events, some timed to darkness or specific lunar phases, can be altered by well-lit coasts or nighttime industrial activity. The delicate balance of nocturnal behavior, shaped over millions of years, suddenly competes with a species that has been here for barely a blink of evolutionary time. Yet there is hope. Some coastal regions have already implemented dark sky marine zones, areas where artificial lighting is controlled to protect wildlife. Ship speed regulations reduce noise and lower collision risks for whales. Advances in quieter ship technology are beginning to gain traction. Awareness grows each year as scientists uncover more evidence of how deeply human nighttime activity affects the ocean. But until these solutions become widespread, the nighttime ocean will remain a place where natural rhythms meet human disturbance. Animals that already face difficulties navigating, feeding, hiding, or communicating in the dark must now contend with glowing coastlines and persistent engines. And while we sleep comfortably on land, unaware of the confusion drifting outward from our shores, the ocean adjusts as best it can, its creatures improvising through a soundscape and lights show they never asked for. If you could peel back the darkness like a curtain and watch the ocean at night in its full, unraveled complexity, you might never think about sleep the same way again. While we lie in warm beds, dreaming about car keys we misplaced or emails we forgot to send, the sea is staging a nightly transformation so vast and so intricate that it makes our daytime routines look like mild background noise. The nighttime ocean is not a quiet counterpart to the day. It is an alternate universe living on the same planet, a world that wakes up just as ours powers down. If daylight reveals the ocean we expect, then nighttime reveals the ocean we never knew existed. What makes this dark world extraordinary isn't a single event, creature, or behavior. It's the fact that all of them coexist, layered, simultaneous, and endlessly dynamic. The moment sunlight slips away, entire communities begin shifting, rising, sinking, feeding, glowing, hunting, hiding, spawning, drifting, and recalibrating. It's as if the ocean has a day personality and a night personality, each with its own rules, energies, and secrets. And for creatures of the sea, this is not dramatic. This is simply how life works. As darkness spreads across the water, the upper layers, which might seem still and empty from the surface, become a living highway. Animals that spent the day far below in shadowy depths ascend in numbers so massive that they change the density of entire water layers. They fill the darkness with endless movement. They turn vertical space into shifting traffic. They slip upward to feed, each species following patterns encoded long before humans existed. The dark becomes busier than the brightest reef at noon, bustling with tiny bodies all trying to move silently through a world that never fully rests. Farther below, creatures that never see the sun respond to this shift with their own adaptations. Eyes attuned to the faintest sparks of bioluminescence watch for prey or predators. Soft-bodied animals drift with slow confidence, trusting their sensory systems to guide them. And deep-sea hunters, wrapped in shadows thicker than midnight ink, move with absolute precision. Every flick of a fin, a calculation, every movement, a lesson learned from eons of surviving in total dark. Meanwhile, creatures along the seafloor emerge like late-night staff, unlocking the doors to a restaurant kitchen. They come out to clean, to feed, to search for what has drifted down through the water column during the day's frenzy. Each scrap of organic material becomes a resource, a signal, a chance. The bottom of the ocean is not untouched stillness. It is a place of motion and purpose, slowed to a quieter tempo, like the soft hum of a city that never fully sleeps. Above it all, the moon plays conductor, directing movements without ever being aware it's doing anything at all. Its light nudges some creatures upward, pushes others downward, encourages migrations, triggers spawning, and signals when it's safe or not safe to leave hiding places. Even clouds passing over the moon can change the behavior of thousands of organisms at once. In the nighttime ocean, the smallest flicker of light or change in brightness is not poetic. It is practical. The sea reads the sky like a clock, and countless animals follow that invisible schedule. But as much as the nighttime ocean feels ancient and timeless, it is also fragile. Human-made noise and light seep into this darkness, changing behaviors and confusing creatures whose instincts were shaped long before ships, headlights, and coastal cities existed. What feels like nothing more than a distant glow to us becomes a bright blaze to a fish trying to find shelter. What registers as a low vibration from a ship engine becomes a booming distortion to a whale searching for its pod. And yet, even in the face of these disruptions, the ocean keeps performing its nightly cycle, changing, adapting, and adjusting in ways that are both remarkable and heartbreaking. If there is one thing the nighttime ocean teaches us, it's that Earth is busy in ways most of us never consider. The surface world sleeps, but the ocean does not. It never has. Somewhere beneath your pillow, miles away under the waves, creatures are rising toward a moonlit shimmer, communicating in flickers of blue-green light, moving nutrients through water, and making decisions based on senses we barely understand. The sea is running a 24-hour operation, and its night shift is as essential as its day shift. And somehow, through all this complexity, everything works. The nighttime migrations support global food webs. The movements of microscopic creatures regulate the planet's carbon cycle. The subtle cooling and mixing of water layers stabilize ecosystems. Predators hunt silently, prey scatter strategically, and whole communities behave with a rhythm that, though chaotic in appearance, forms an elegant balance. When morning returns, the ocean transitions again. The night creatures descend or hide. The daytime species return to their routines, and the surface regains its familiar shimmer. But that quiet surface hides the truth, that while we slept, millions of stories unfolded in the dark below, stories filled with silent drama, shimmering signals, and ceaseless rearrangements. Stories that shape our climate, sustain our planet, and keep life functioning in the unseen half of Earth's daily cycle. The nighttime ocean is not just a different version of the day. It is a hidden world, operating with its own rules and rhythms. A world of deep blue secrets and glowing whispers. A world carrying out work that makes life on land possible. And as you drift toward your next night of sleep, you can be certain of one thing. The ocean will be wide awake, doing its mysterious, essential science-worthy chaos, just as it has for hundreds of millions of years.